Lena was the kind of woman who turned heads wherever she went, tall, graceful, with deep brown eyes that held both warmth and quiet determination. She worked as a senior executive at a prestigious marketing firm, known for her sharp mind and relentless work ethic. Colleagues admired her. Clients trusted her. But behind her polished smile was a struggle she endured in silence. Her boss, Mr. Dalton, was a powerful man, charismatic in meetings, ruthless in business and predatory in private. At first, his attention had seemed harmless, a lingering hand on her shoulder, a compliment on her appearance. But soon, the touches grew bolder, the comments more suggestive. He would call her into his office under the guise of work, only to corner her with invasive questions about her personal life. "You're too beautiful to be so serious, Lena," he'd murmur, his fingers brushing against hers as she handed him reports. "A woman like you should know how to have fun." Lena clenched her jaw, swallowing her disgust. She needed this job, her mother's medical bills, her younger brother's tuition, all of it depended on her income. So she endured. She dodged his advances, deflected his comments, and buried herself in her work. But every avoided touch, every sly remark, chipped away at her spirit. One evening, as she stayed late to finish a project, Dalton entered her office, locking the door behind him. Her heart pounded as he leaned against her desk, his gaze raking over her. "You work too hard," he said, his voice low. "Let me help you relax." Lena's hands trembled, but something inside her snapped. She stood abruptly, her voice steady despite the storm inside. "No." Dalton blinked, taken aback. "Excuse me." "I said no," she repeated, her voice firm. "I'm here to work, not to entertain you. If you touch me again, if you speak to me like that one more time, I will report you. And I have every email, every recording, every witness to back me up." A tense silence followed. Dalton's smirk faded, replaced by cold calculation. Then, with a dismissive wave, he left. The harassment didn't stop overnight, but Lena's defiance did. She documented everything, confided in trusted colleagues, and sought legal advice. When Dalton tried to sabotage her promotion, she fought back, not with anger, but with undeniable proof of her worth. Months later, Lena sat in her new office, the one with the VP title on the door. Dalton had been quietly reassigned after an anonymous complaint reached the board. She gazed out the window, her reflection strong, unbroken. Beauty had never defined her, her resilience did. Lena's promotion to vice president should have been a triumph. But the scars of Dalton's harassment lingered. The office whispers, she slept her way up. She's just using her looks, cut deeper than she expected. Even in victory, she had to prove herself all over again. But she refused to let bitterness consume her. Instead, she focused on her work, leading her team with fairness and dedication. Slowly, the rumors faded, replaced by respect. Then, one evening, as she reviewed contracts in her office, a soft knock interrupted her. "Come in," she said, not looking up. The door opened, and a hesitant voice spoke. "Miss Carter." Lena glanced up to see Emily, a young intern, standing in the doorway. Her hands were clenched, her eyes red-rimmed. "Emily. What's wrong?" Lena asked, setting her pen down. The girl swallowed hard. "It's Mr. Dalton. He's been saying things. Touching me when no one's looking. I don't know what to do." Lena's blood ran cold. "He's still doing it." She gestured for Emily to sit. "Tell me everything." As Emily recounted the harassment, the lingering touches, the late-night meetings, the veiled threats, Lena saw her own past reflected in the intern's frightened eyes. "I need this job," Emily whispered. "But I can't take it anymore." Lena leaned forward, her voice firm. "You don't have to. And you're not alone." The next morning, Lena walked into the CEO's office not as a victim, but as a leader. She placed a file on his desk, filled with documented incidents, witness statements, and even recordings from other women Dalton had targeted. "This ends today," she said. The CEO, a stern but fair man, reviewed the evidence in silence. When he finally looked up, his expression was grim. "Why didn't anyone come forward before?" "Because we were afraid," Lena admitted. But not anymore. Within hours, security escorted Dalton out of the building. The news spread like wildfire, some shocked, others relieved. A few even smirked, as if they'd expected his downfall. But Lena wasn't done. A week later, she launched an initiative, Safe Workplace, a confidential support system for employees facing harassment. She partnered with HR and legal teams to ensure no one would suffer in silence again. At the launch meeting, Emily stood beside her, no longer trembling but determined. Other women, and even some men, came forward, sharing their stories. Dalton's name became a cautionary tale, but Lena's became a symbol of change. Years later, Lena sat at the head of the boardroom table. Now the CEO of her own consulting firm, one built on integrity, respect, and zero tolerance for abuse. A young new hire once asked her, "How did you get here?" Lena smiled. "By refusing to let fear write my story." 5 years after Dalton's termination, Lena's consulting firm had flourished, becoming known not just for its results but for its ethical culture. She had built a sanctuary where talent thrived without fear until the day he resurfaced. A late-night email notification glowed on her screen. "Congratulations on your success, Lena. It's impressive. Though I always knew you had potential. Perhaps we should discuss a partnership. After all, I've been watching your rise with great interest." The sender's name made her stomach twist, Richard Dalton. Lena's fingers hovered over the keyboard, her breath shallow. He had no right to contact her, not after the restraining order. Not after everything. Yet here he was, slithering back into her life. Her assistant, Marcus, knocked gently on her office door. "You okay, boss? You look like you've seen a ghost." She minimized the email. "Just tired." But she wasn't fooling anyone, least of all herself. At first, the signs were small, things she could dismiss as coincidence. Her favorite coffee order waiting at her desk, when she never told anyone she was coming in early. A shadowy figure lingering near her car in the parking garage. Then, the voicemail. "You were always too good for that firm, Lena. But you belong to me. Always have." Dalton's voice, smooth as poison. Lena's hands shook as she called security. But when they checked the cameras, the figure was gone, just a blur in the darkness. She couldn't outrun him. Not this time. Lena gathered her legal team, pulling every record of Dalton's past misconduct. The restraining order, the new harassment. But her lawyer's expression was grim. "Without direct proof it's him, there's only so much we can do." Lena clenched her fists. No. Not again. Then, an idea struck. She replied to Dalton's email. "Let's meet. Just you and me. No lawyers, no games." Her team protested, but Lena was resolute. "I won't spend my life looking over my shoulder. It ends now." They set up surveillance, hidden cameras, audio recording, everything needed to catch him in the act. The meeting place, a quiet, public cafe. Neutral ground. Dalton arrived dressed in a tailored suit, his smile slick with arrogance. Lena, still as stunning as ever. She didn't smile back. "Why are you doing this?" He leaned in, his voice a whisper. "Because you were mine. And you walked away." Her skin crawled, but she held his gaze. "I was never yours. And I never will be." His smirk faltered. Then, his hand shot out, gripping her wrist. "You think you're untouchable now? You'll always be." Security and police swarmed in, detaining him as Lena stood, rubbing her wrist. Dalton's face twisted in rage. "You bitch. You set me up." Lena finally smiled. "No. I held you accountable." With the recording as evidence, Dalton was arrested not just for harassment, but for violating the restraining order. This time, there would be no quiet reassignment, no second chances. As the courtroom doors closed behind him, Lena exhaled, feeling the weight of years finally lift. Marcus handed her a coffee, her real favorite, not the one Dalton had left. You good? She took a sip, then nodded. Better than good. Free. Years later, Lena's firm launched a national hotline for workplace harassment victims. Her story inspired thousands to speak up, fight back, and reclaim their power. And when asked how she found the courage to face Dalton again, she simply said, "I refused to let fear win twice." Lena sat in her penthouse office, the city lights glittering below like scattered diamonds. At 42, she had built an empire not just of wealth, but of change. Her Safe Workplace initiative had expanded globally. Her consulting firm was a powerhouse. And she had just been named one of Time magazine's most influential people. Then her phone rang. Unknown caller. Normally, she would ignore it. But something, instinct, fate, made her answer. A young woman's voice, trembling but determined. "Miss Carter. My name is Rachel. I think I'm being harassed by Richard Dalton." Lena's blood turned to ice. "He got out of prison last month," Rachel continued. "And now he's the COO of my company." Dalton had served only 3 years of his 5-year sentence. With good behavior and expensive lawyers, he had slipped back into the corporate world under a slightly altered name, with a carefully scrubbed online presence. But his tactics hadn't changed. Rachel, a 25-year-old analyst, had been his latest target. The late-night emails, the accidental touches, the whispered threats when no one else could hear. "I found your name in an article about workplace harassment," Rachel said. "I didn't know who else to call." Lena closed her eyes. She had thought this battle was over. But evil didn't die, it just learned to hide better. Lena didn't just help Rachel. She mobilized. Within 48 hours, she had gathered every woman Dalton had ever targeted: Emily, her former intern; Sarah, a quiet accountant from his old firm; Mia, a bartender he'd harassed after hours. They sat in Lena's conference room. A sisterhood of survivors, sharing stories like armor. "He told me no one would believe me," Sarah said, her voice steady now. "He said I'd never work in this industry again," Mia added. Rachel looked around, tears in her eyes. "I had no idea there were so many of us." Lena placed a hand on hers. "That's how he wins. By making us feel alone. But we're not." This time, they didn't just go to HR. They went public. A viral expose. A hashtag, "Not My COO." A coordinated flood of testimonies to the company's board. Dalton's new employer, a Fortune 500 company, had ignored whispers. But they couldn't ignore this. The morning the news broke, Lena watched on live TV as Dalton was escorted out of his office by police. Not just for harassment, but for perjury about his criminal past. This time, there would be no leniency. The fallout was seismic. Companies began auditing their executive hires. States passed stricter laws about disclosing past misconduct. Lena testified before Congress, her voice clear and unshakable. And Rachel? She launched her own advocacy group, mentoring young women entering the corporate world. One evening, as they stood on Lena's balcony overlooking the city, Rachel asked, "Do you ever get tired fighting the same battles over and over?" Lena smiled, sipping her wine. "The tide doesn't turn all at once. But every wave erodes the shore a little more." The tide doesn't turn all at once. But every wave erodes the shore a little more. Years later, at Lena's retirement gala, a young woman approached, a new hire at her firm, bright-eyed and fearless. "Your story inspired me to go into HR," she said. "To protect people like you did." Lena felt the weight of the moment. The torch being passed. The legacy continuing. As she looked around the room, at Rachel, now a CEO. At Emily, head of their Safe Workplace network. At hundreds of faces who'd fought alongside her, she realized. This was true power. Not just surviving. Not just succeeding. But ensuring no one would ever have to fight alone again. Lena's retirement gala had been a ruse. A cleverly staged exit to make corporate predators drop their guard. Because while the world thought Lena Carter was settling into a life of philanthropy and beachside margaritas, she was actually building something far more dangerous. An underground network of corporate whistleblowers. Her penthouse office had been replaced by a nondescript downtown loft, where encrypted servers hummed a rotating team of hackers. Lawyers and former victims worked under code names. Operation Silent Storm was born. Their inaugural target, Gregory Voss, a tech billionaire whose harassment settlements were buried under mountains of NDAs. His victims called him the octopus, always touching, always watching, never caught. Until now. Lena's team deployed their newest weapon, an AI called Whisper, that could analyze thousands of documents in hours, finding patterns HR departments missed. Within a week, they'd uncovered 37 hidden payouts, 14 manipulated performance reviews of women who refused him, an entire secret server of inappropriate photos. The data went viral at 9 a.m. on a Monday. By noon, Voss's stock had plummeted. By 5 p.m., he'd resigned to spend more time with family. The message was clear: nowhere to hide. Powerful men began to panic. A shadowy group of executives formed. The Old Guard, an alliance to discredit Lena's movement. They planted fake harassment claims to muddy the waters, hired private investigators to dig into her past, even orchestrated a cyber attack on Whisper. Lena found herself staring at a death threat slipped under her apartment door. "You should have stayed retired, bitch." Marcus, now her head of security, wanted her to go into hiding. She laughed. "They are scared. That means we are winning." The loft became a command center. Rachel led counter-PR. Emily coordinated with legislators. MIA's hacker collective fended off cyber attacks. Then came their boldest move yet, a live-streamed leak day, where hundreds of corporate abusers were exposed simultaneously worldwide. The internet exploded. News channels scrambled. Boardrooms erupted into chaos. Lena watched the dominoes fall from a burner phone in a safe house, sipping cheap whiskey. Marcus shook his head. "You just declared war on the most powerful men on earth." She grinned. "About time someone did." The email arrived at 3 a.m. from an encrypted account. "I can get you access to the Old Guard's inner circle. Meet me at the place where Dalton first touched you." It was signed, the wife. Lena's blood ran cold. Claire Dalton. Richard's ex-wife, the woman who'd stood silently by during his trial. Their meeting was tense. Claire's designer clothes couldn't hide her shaking hands. "They threatened to take my children if I spoke," she confessed. "But is dead now. And I want to burn it all down." She handed Lena a flash drive containing the Old Guard's membership list, meeting locations, and, most damning, video evidence of them plotting murders of accusers. Lena studied Claire's hollow eyes. "Why now?" A tear fell. "Because my daughter just got her first job at one of their companies. What happened next would be taught in business ethics classes for decades." Dawn raids on 12 executive homes. 268 resignations across 17 countries. The Martha Clause, a new corporate bylaw requiring harassment settlements to be reported to shareholders. Lena stood before Congress again, this time holding Claire's hand as the older woman gave testimony that brought the room to tears. Years later, a young girl on a school tour of the Carter Center for Corporate Justice asked, "Did you really take down all those bad guys by yourself?" Lena, now silver-haired but still sharp-eyed, smiled. "Oh no, sweetheart. I just lit the first match." She gestured to the wall of remembrance. Thousands of names of those who'd come forward. They built the fire.